feel the love. You could feel the community. You just can't replace it.
Hi, this is Bill Nesper from the League of American Bicyclists. Thanks for joining us for another Bikeside Chat. Be sure to check out our other Bikeside Chats on our YouTube page and subscribe to stay in the loop with the League. This National Bike Month, we are speaking one-on-one with the 2021 League Advocacy and Education Award winners every week. We know that the movement to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone is powered by incredible people transforming lives and communities through better bicycling. We thank you for all you do to power this work in your own communities and for joining us to recognize these amazing leaders from across the country who are making bicycling safe, comfortable, and accessible for all. Today, we're kicking off this Bikeside Chat series with the Club of the Year Award winner, Oaks and Spokes from Raleigh, North Carolina. The Club of the Year Award recognizes a bike club that provides a great experience for its members and for people who are new to bicycling. Clubs that earn this award do an exceptional job of integrating advocacy into club activities or supporting local advocacy organizations. This award is about recognizing clubs that are inclusive, welcoming, and committed to growing bicycling. Oaks and Spokes fosters a community of people who ride bikes in Raleigh, and they achieve this by organizing and supporting events, advocating for improvements to the city and local businesses, and deploying tactical urbanism projects like pop-up cycle tracks and bike corrals. Their vision is that bicycling in Raleigh will be safe and convenient and comfortable for all people of all ages and abilities. Clubs like Oaks and Spokes sustain the work of the League by putting in the miles, by welcoming new riders to the joys of biking, by generally making the biking community better and more inclusive. If you know a bike club like that, please let us know. The 2022 awards will be here before we all know it. Now, I'm going to hand this over to the staff member that gets to work with our awesome clubs most often, League Director of Membership and Development, Kevin Deckinga.
Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Kevin Deckinga. I am Director of Membership and Development with the League of American Bicyclists. I'm here today with our Club of the Year Award winners, Oaks and Spokes of Raleigh, North Carolina. Maricel and Nick Neptune, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for making us Club of the Year.
Yeah. So we're doing these chats with all of our award winners. The bike advocacy world, there's so much that we can learn from each other and celebrate in each other's success. I'd love to just ask a few questions and get our audience more familiar and learn more about what you do.
Awesome.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. First off, of course, tell us a little bit more about Oaks and Spokes and how you got started.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll kick off and then let Nick accompany. So Oaks and Spokes was founded about 10 years ago by a woman named Christy Jackson. I think she saw a void in our community for creating community for people who bike. I actually really like Nick got looped into it earlier than I did because I've only been in Raleigh 5 years, and Nick talks about now as our board chair how early on he really embraced that culture here in Raleigh. Do you want to talk about how you joined some of the social rides and all that?
Yeah, well, I think what I appreciate so much about my own experience and exposure with Oaks and Spokes and just the city is that, I had friends actively inviting and encouraging me to move to Raleigh 10 years ago. And it was very early on in that experience that, it just so happens some friends were involved in the early rides with Oaks and Spokes and some of the early sort of cycling shops that were opening up. And for me, being invited onto the rides, it was a great way to not only meet new people as I was being introduced to the city, but it was just a great way to get to know the city, to get to know the landscape of the city. I mean, I think, many of us know and appreciate a great way to get to know your community is on bike and on foot. And, riding around the city, I mean, I experienced the full range and spectrum of living. I mean, I lived fully, going to the parks, falling in love on bike. I'm a big, there's a lot of appreciation, I think, for those early years with Oaks and Spokes where they, there was a real balance of, advocacy, absolutely, but then also just having fun, just getting out and having fun together and just really building community through the rides. So.
Yeah.
It's great. Tell me a little bit more about what it's like to ride a bike in Raleigh right now. I've never been.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement, and that's why we're here. You could call it job security in one way, but there's been a lot of forward momentum recently too, which is really encouraging. And I think another thing that we should mention is we have an amazing greenway system, and I think that can be a lot of people's introduction to biking in Raleigh, because there's like this all ages and abilities infrastructure right there, and I think it's like close to 100 miles of greenway just in Raleigh, and then that expands further into our county system. So that's an asset that really can't be undervalued, I think. But we've been trying to encourage our elected officials to think more and more about that on-road connection and making it all ages and abilities. And so there have been some recent additions where we have separated bike lanes. So like our first bollard protected bike lane, which, might not be new to others, but that's a fun thing that Oaks and Spokes engaged in, because in 2019, we had a pop-up where we kind of helped our community envision that. And it's kind of become a favorite thing for us now to think, oh, where can we do these pop-ups to get people thinking about separated bike lanes? What do you think it's like riding like in Raleigh right now, Nick?
Yeah, well, and I would just echo what Mary was saying. First and foremost, I mean, it's a city, it's a growing city. So it's like riding a bike almost anywhere else. You get on the roads and you're out there, you're going, and by and large having a great time. But from time to time, there are these little pressure points, right? Little moments of friction where, you've got the motorists they're clearly in a rush to get somewhere. And it's like, well, I too am a human being trying to get places. So let's all get where we got to go safely. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, at the end of the day, we're an advocacy organization for a reason, right? And I suspect that there are an increasing number of, cycling and sort of multimodal, micromobility sort of advocacy organizations, because we realize that, well, number one, our transportation networks and infrastructure, so much of it that we know and certainly appreciate today, this stuff was coming about decades ago, right? Decades ago. It's a new day. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons over that time as it relates to, the sustainability of our infrastructure, of our built environment, right? And so, I think there's a shifting in the culture, I mean, you look at who the current Secretary of Transportation is for the United States of America. We're making steps in the right direction, but I think it takes all of us. Like, we all have a role to play, whether we're individuals who are just out there riding our bikes, treating each other and other, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists with respect as we kind of make our way and navigating. But then at the same time, organizations that kind of work in partnership with cities to identify opportunities to host pop-ups, public engagement efforts, to really, facilitate that dialogue and sort of deeper understanding as to why we want to see these improvements in infrastructure happen. I mean, it's not even just like, oh, I want protected bike lanes for the bikers. No, I also want to improve connectivity from one neighborhood to the next, from one community to the opportunity to participate in the growing city. You hear what I'm saying? We're talking about access to school, access to work, access to jobs. That to me, that's a winning case for, bicycling lanes.
Spot on. I love it. Tell us about the last year. How did Oaks and Spokes respond to the pandemic? How did it look different than a normal year for your organization?
I mean, what a year it's been, right?
Yeah.
I think, it was initially, right when COVID first hit, of course, everybody was like gearing up for Bike Month, and everybody had to quickly pivot to these all virtual events. And I think, it's been so awesome to see kind of nationally, but also here in Raleigh, like everybody's grabbing their bike, you know what I mean? Like in the neighborhoods, and people that maybe didn't have time for that before because they were doing their slog of their commute every day, just really, I think, experienced or rediscovered biking, which is so wonderful to see. And so I think we've tried to kind of listen to the community in that respect and engage in the whole new group and population. And now that we are hopefully, entering a new phase of the pandemic where more people are vaccinated, we're really looking forward to, again, seeing people in a safe and socially distanced way outdoors. But, we have some Bike Month events, for instance, planned this year that we're really excited about, and finally getting back into that space.
Great.
Yeah, here again, if I could echo Mary, and maybe
Yeah.
sort of focus on the last few months, right? Because, Mary and myself, we've both sort of come on board more formally, here recently. And I think that, as we have observed sort of the growing cycling community over the course of COVID-19, there's a desire to embrace it, to support it. But then, of course, in terms of programming and events, be thoughtful and mindful about everyone's, health and safety. But here we are. It's April, almost May, and people are getting shots in arms. I officially will be fully ready to go by May 1st, kickoff for Bike Month.
It's a sign.
Perfect.
Thanks to Pfizer. But my point is that, over the last few months, we really doubled down on trying to strike the balance in virtual, community conversations, having conversations with, folks across the city who are leaders in cycling advocacy and infrastructure for the city, nonprofit partners, for-profit partners. But then at the same time, organizing an in-person sort of celebration of bike racks and their installation at a local pizza shop. Over here at Trophy Brewing, I think through Mary Sell's great work, worked with that team and installing like 100 bike racks in front of the pizza shop.
Wow, I don't know if it's 100.
Well, it's a lot of bike racks,
maybe.
Too many to count. But the point is, we organized a very safe, come like stack the racks event. And I got to tell you, I think it was for me, maybe the first like public event and engagement that was like, I think it was in March, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Mary? But my point is that you could feel the love. You could feel the community. You just can't replace it. Let me tell you something, Kevin, it's great to see you through this computer. I would love to see you in person though.
Likewise. I want to go to Raleigh. I want to bike to pizza.
Bike month because I think it's a nice balance of the two, both in person and virtual, ultimately facilitating space where whatever you're comfortable with, we got it for you. We're going to celebrate bikes all in May. Come through.
Oh, great. I love it. All right. So it's clear that you both love bikes now. Everyone in our world has a bike origin story. What is your bike origin story?
I love Nick. So for me, I just grew up in a small town and I walked and biked everywhere as a kid, and it just was like a part of how I functioned. So it just felt like a natural extension as I got into adulthood. But Nick, you take the cake for this. I want you to share your story.
Oh, anticipation.
My story is just like the American story, bikes meant freedom for us as kids, but it also just so happens that I grew up on a military base, okay? One of the largest installations in the country. We're at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Born at Fort Bragg, but then eventually, Dad was stationed at Fort Campbell. But the point of that is, I grew up with a black and green kids Huffy, and I learned to ride that bike on the military base. I went through a training course with the military police, the MPs. They set up all the cones. I had to get through the cones. And at the end of this whole training day on a Saturday, I got this black and green notebook with the certificate of completion. You could have told me I graduated from Yale. I was so excited. I'm serious. I'm fairly certain. I really want to track down that certificate because I know I didn't throw it away. I kept that with me from Kentucky back to North Carolina, my friend.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so
I've heard that one a few times already. And I'm like, I gotta share this.
Oh, perfect.
It's a distinct memory of being out there with all these kids, all these men and women in uniform, just learning how to ride a bike, learning how to do it safely.
Yeah.
And, maybe in part that story resonates with me, especially present day, because let's be honest, we're engaging in a national conversation as it relates to public safety, as it relates to, race, So I think that we've got to, engage in these conversations truthfully, just in other words, let's acknowledge the truth of our shared history, right? But then let's also acknowledge that along with that pain and suffering, here we are today because of a lot of progress made too, because ultimately people did not lose faith in each other. So let's acknowledge the trauma and the truth of where we were yesterday. But let's talk about where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow together. Because let me tell you something. I don't think Elon Musk is going to have a spaceship for us to fly off to Mars anytime soon. So, we have this one Earth, this one space and place to share. So let's do the best we can to maintain it and sustain it, together.
Yeah, perfect. What do you hope to accomplish in the next few years in bike advocacy in Raleigh?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because as Nick had mentioned previously, he and I'm actually the first staff member for Oaks and Spokes. So I started staffing up the organization in January. So that was a really pivotal moment for our organization. And Nick, came on as our board chair at the same time. So I think we're both really excited about the future of our organization and the future of advocacy and work and biking generally here in Raleigh right now, because we feel like there's a lot of momentum. So that's why we were so pleasantly surprised and excited to hear from y'all, because it just felt like, Nick and I always talk about how we're building on 10 years of really good work, and people who have really dedicated a lot of themselves and their time to seeing this trajectory continue in the way it has been. So it's really awesome to feel like, to see that was acknowledged on this national scale, and then just building off of that locally to continue moving things forward.
Yeah, I mean, know that it doesn't go unnoticed. Our awards are peer judged, peer nominated, and there are people in your community who tipped us off. They said, you should look at the great work that Oaks and Spokes is doing. And we couldn't agree more.
Well, if I may just echo what you're saying, and just in terms of number one, I think the deep gratitude that we feel in this recognition. It's very clear that this is recognition of the work of so many others over the last, near decade, on behalf of Oaks and Spokes, beginning with Christy, right? And moving forward, all the way through, more recently with Cody Stokes, and then, under his leadership, on all those, his various boards and then iterations, Jonathan, and the whole cast and crew of folks that have been deeply involved in the work of Oaks and Spokes. So I think there's a desire to, just acknowledge and appreciate all of that work and just build off that foundation, right? Something that I appreciate about sort of the idea of the Cycling Club of the Year is that, we seek to be as inclusive and welcoming of a club as possible in our advocacy work. And that's something that's particularly important to me, kind of sort of following through with a comment earlier. I think it's true that this organization has grown a lot because of a growing cycling community. But at the same time, there are definitely, like in many other major cities, underserved, under-resourced pockets and neighborhoods here and there. And any way that we can leverage, I think, our talents, our strengths in serving as advocates, for these neighborhoods that, again, historically have been underserved and under-resourced, in terms of, every time, we come through and we engage neighbors in a conversation around future bicycling lanes or, just improved access, that's what it's about. It's really a conversation rooted in, how can we create more opportunities for health and wellness for the folks who've lived here for decades? How can we improve access and opportunity to work, to school, just to play, just to get to know your neighbors? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these are our cities and our communities. They're not stagnant, or at least they don't have to be. I think what we know today, more so than we've known ever before, is that, we need to seek out every way possible to seed and grow opportunities to include more people in the conversation around their built environment, because it's our built environment. And so that's what, when you think about the next 2-3 years, I mean, yes, of course, we're going to advocate for more protected bike lanes, absolutely. But in addition to that, I think we're also seeking to very deliberately reach out, engage, and listen to historically underserved, under-resourced communities. How can we be a partner in supporting and uplifting and embracing, the least among us?
Yeah.
Wow, perfect. Do you have any event plans for this year? Is there a signature event that you are hoping to have, or is there anything that you want our viewers to check out? Yeah, your website, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it probably won't come out in time, because we have an event this weekend.
Oh, wow.
No pressure on editing the video, but it's our next pop-up event, and we haven't been able to do a pop-up, and it also, I think, is as Nick was talking about underserved communities as well. I think it's important to talk about building trust again in communities where there has been a traditional disinvestment. So that's something that we are looking to be a good partner on and be a good listener, and just get out there in our community in Raleigh and be there to listen to folks and to hear what do they need, how can we help, where can we be the best partner possible. So I think with Bike Month, that's such a fun way to engage in the community too, because there's so much going on traditionally. So we definitely have lots of fun stuff planned there. And I think we definitely plan to host a party at some point to celebrate the Club of the Year situation. That's something that we just want to celebrate. So hopefully by fall, we have a higher vaccination rate and we can do that safely and in person. So I think that could be something people could stay tuned for locally here in Raleigh.
Great. Nick, any closing thoughts?
I echo everything Ms. Sell shared there. I think that after living under the year of COVID-19, this pandemic, there's a lot of pent-up energy that I think we are looking forward to channeling appropriately, not only into some healthy cycling advocacy work, but into some good social work too. You know what I'm saying? I really do. I think there's a lot to be said for just getting together and sharing space and just seeing one another again and doing it safely, right? And I think the fact that we're now in a place where it's like everybody over 16 can get a vaccine, hopefully by the time we get around to, September, October, we can really and truly follow through this year with a major get together that celebrates our community of cyclists.
Yeah,
Right.
Great. I'd love to be there.
Yeah, Kevin, you're invited.
Zoom in.
Just make the months for us, September, October, sometime around there.
Oh yeah, perfect. Well, thank you both for your time. Congratulations again. Club of the Year, Oaks and Spokes of Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank you. And hope to catch you at the National Bike Summit next year in person, perhaps.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you so
Thanks
much,
again.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.